I read some of your entries in your diary from the solo from the pole.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you woke up in the morning and you drank your mandatory fluids and then had some oatmeal.
Yeah.
And I have two questions. One, how do you monitor your fluids in an extreme cold like that? I know it's difficult to be aware of hydration in the cold. And secondly, if you had only one food that you could take with you on one of your adventures, what would that be?
Okay, good questions. The fluid, of course, in the dry, cold weather, you're using a lot of fluids. And we do our fluids, mainly when you're traveling like this, it's a perfect rhythm. You do the same thing every day. And we live in tents with 2 people per tent. So in my tent unit, I like to set up a rhythm where I do the same thing every day, where I don't switch off chores. And I do the same thing with the dogs every day. So your day is always exactly the same. And you're also, like, especially when you're outside, hooking up dogs, tying knots, you're trying to do it always more efficiently, more simpler, so you can save those seconds and minutes of time that are very, very cold. So within this rhythm, liquids, for example, are important. In the morning, I drink a lot of liquid, usually about a pint and a half or a quart and a half of liquid. So I drink a lot of liquids during the day. And then at lunch, we have liquids again. And we normally don't stop between lunch and breakfast. But then at the end of the day, the first thing we do when we finally get the tent up and the chores are over, we have a large cup of tea. That's the greatest part of the day, is having this hot liquid. So the liquid part is almost a part of your ritual during the day, those 3 times. And then normally too, the Inuit will drink more tea. They'll stop during the day and have tea. So that's part of the ritual. A lot of times when we get into a situation where we're traveling, like, let's say some thin ice that we have to travel across and we have to make a decision on that, many times we'll stop, have a cup of tea, and then think about it during that time, get our thoughts together, and then we'll go. So the water part of that is pretty regime. In terms of the choice of the food, by far, if I had a choice of one food, it would be caribou. We normally, when we're traveling in Antarctica, the North Pole, of Greenland, on the ice caps, on the pack ice of the area, there's no wildlife there. So there we're always on rations. And also when we're traveling in the polar regions like that, weight is a real restriction. So we're allowed 2 pounds, 2 ounces of food a day, and within that regime you have to fill, your requirements. Most of that food would be, a lot of starches like oatmeal, pasta, rice, there'd be butter, cheese, dried meat called pemmican, bread, and so forth. And very good organic. This expedition is almost probably 95% organic. Some of your local organic farms here are supplying us with meat and dairy. So when you're in the polar areas like this, you're eating regular rations. But when you're in like northern Canada, like we're doing now in the cultural areas, there's wildlife present. And so caribou for me is, the Inuit would also say, the Inuit that we're traveling with, they like caribou and char. They're in an area where char is like a cross between a trout and a salmon. Most of them will say char is their favorite food. Char and caribou are the same thing, usually the same choice for them. Like the Inuit people, they eat their meat pretty much raw. And the caribou, when I'm cooking it, I may just cook it a little bit on the outside. The inside is sometimes even frozen. But then we use it with a lot of butter because the caribou is lean. But and then the usual regime when you're eating that way, kind of close to the land, you eat a very big supper. The evening meal is by far your big meal. And morning is pretty light, afternoon is fairly light too. So you're eating one big feed, 2 pounds maybe of raw meat, which may sound kind of strange to you, but this meat is like, it's the best food in the world. I mean, it's as pure as anything, and there's no parasites up there. And when you're eating caribou, you feel it, you get strong. You get almost like a direct blood transfusion of that animal into your body. The other food that I crave in real cold weather is seal. Seal meat is, for our taste, kind of hard to adjust to it unless you're in really cold weather, because it's a kind of a fishy red meat. Nothing you'd sit down at a table you'll probably eat when you have other choices. But my first reaction to seal was like a well, 20 years ago. It was 40, 50 below outside, and I ate my first, the way we eat seal, you cut it in chunks about this big and you boil it very lightly, so it's just boiled on the outside, and then it's raw in the middle, and then the soup is really good part of it. But when I ate it that first night, it was felt kind of weird eating it, and but I got it down. And then the next morning, next afternoon, around 3 o'clock is when your hunger comes in, about 3 or 4, and then when you're hungry, then your mind turns to food. And about 3 o'clock, that's all I could start, all my mind could think about was seal meat. And because it was the fatty red meat, and it was giving me not only the energy of this muscle, but it was giving my body heat where I slept really good. You get into a very good natural rhythm, and one reason I do expeditions is it's the ultimate sort of a quest type thing. I mean, I don't you know,